the Sanctuary of Light and the Light Institute welcome each and all of you to this time of knowings and invite you to bring forward the conversations of your heart so that we can quicken who we are and the purpose of our lives. So I invite you to simply bring forward any conversation that's important to you this time.
I was hoping you'd talk about acceptance.
Yes. I'm smiling because I was at the farmer's market yesterday and one of the vendors said that their daughter was working on unconditional love, a teenager, and that she couldn't find anyone who might have such a thing as unconditional love. And so acceptance moves right into that arena, doesn't it? Because unconditional love and acceptance are about, in fact, seeing beyond the mask and touching into the soul energy. So we can accept someone when we know them, when we don't need something from them. One of the difficulties we have that causes us to be so judgmental is that we actually want things from the people around us. We want them to reflect to us that we are wonderful, that we are acceptable. We want them to acknowledge or love or take care of us. And so because we are extending out that kind of energy, we very often cannot accept other people's in any of their foibles or their turning their head in a different direction rather than us. And so how to get acceptance? Accept the self. If we really could comprehend that we are not just humans, that we are having a human experience, and that all experiences that we have are speeding our evolution, are allowing us to give back to the cosmos a wealth of information and wisdom that we cannot get except by coming again and again and again into body. And so if we could feel that pulse, we could relax a bit from our judgments, from our this isn't right, or it can't be this way, or I couldn't love you because, and be able to accept. We can accept others, again, when we don't need from them. And that is an incredible point of reference for humanity. We are a group species. We want each other. But there's a level of wanting that gets in the way when it comes to acceptance. And that is, again, that push-pull, the buying and selling that occurs between ourselves and the outside world. So when we can feel an acceptance of the self, when we can say, good job, or whoops, fell off the edge there. Nobody's counting. Nobody's watching. I know that's a shock to most religious people, but it's true. And so when we can bring that kind of peace to the self, each time that we have an experience that doesn't go the way we want, and we look at our part in it, and we take that power of responsibility, it will open us to acceptance. It will open us to that recognition of the self, it says. And so we learn, and so we learn. And as we do that, we can look out on everyone else and say, and so you learn, and so you learn. Because we don't need them to be the reflection for ourselves. And therefore we can enjoy them. We can love them. One of the rules of energy exchange is that we don't love those that we are afraid of. That pretty much takes out everybody in our lives. We're afraid of our parents, we're afraid of our bosses, we're afraid of our government, we're afraid of just about anybody who doesn't speak our language or belongs to a different church, etc., etc. So where is the love? When we think of acceptance, we cannot access it without some kind of an expansion of the sense of love. And love is acceptance. Love is simply that I see you, as they say in the movies. which is something I've said for years. I loved it when they said, I see you. Because if you do, then you can accept someone. So when we look at someone and we know that we want them to see us or we want them to give it to us, if we can move that around inside ourselves and become free, then we can accept them and they will accept us. There's an energy that moves through the auric field when we accept people. And we just say, oh, there you are. There you are. And that allows us to, without effort, without any kind of special whoop-de-doo, actually see who people are. We are one soul group. We have come here at the same time for the same purposes. And we play it out for each other in order to facilitate and to quicken each other's growth. And so, acceptance isn't about forgiveness. As you know, that's one of my pet, forget that stuff. Because forgiveness is always about, you did it to me, instead of a higher octave of, how did I pull that to me? You must be my soul friend. Otherwise you wouldn't reflect something that forces me to grow. So, I think that acceptance is really an easy thing. I witness all the time how children accept, how animals accept, you know. They just, oh, there you are. And that's enough. And we need to come to that point now because the world needs us and we cannot fulfill our destiny while we're whining around and saying, I would if I could, but I can't. Because of you, because. And so that all moves around again to that point of accepting the self. And it's easier to accept the self when we expand our repertoire of the self, which is why we do incarnational work at the Light Institute. When we actually contemplate or access energetically that we have galactic DNA or angelic DNA or devic DNA, that the form and the consciousness that we have is not limited to this structure here. It didn't begin with the structure of our bodies. It will not end with the structure of our bodies. And so as we expand, we can see that we can play the fool, and we can be the wise being. And we can be the healer, and we can be the killer. And all of it is just, again, the food for evolution. So begin to look inside. What don't I accept about myself? Because that's what you're going to see in everybody else around you that's going to bother you. And so when we release it from the self, from the mind of the self, we don't see it anymore outside us. It's a fascinating phenomenon that when you're at peace with yourself, you look out and you think, everyone else is fine. Everyone else is fine. And then you can get about putting your attention and your focus on something that actually serves you. Because while we're measuring and judging, and I will but I won't accept, we are not using the power and the purpose of our lives. And so those things, judgment, forgiveness, acceptance, they need to be removed from our repertoire. Not by removing them in our minds, but removing them in the essence of our being.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Chris.
What else?
Could you talk about radiation and what it is, how we can use it, how we can help our bodies to adjust?
First of all, I'd like to say that we have a very special opportunity for that here in New Mexico because we have a lot of it. A lot of it coming from the earth, a lot of it coming from energies that were buried in Los Alamos and have come back up. We have a lot of it from the first bomb ever exploded in the world in Las Cruces area, in Los Alamos down there. And so what I would say is radiation is one of those energies that will either push you into quickening or it can hurt you. And it's our choice. It is our choice, because the electromagnetic field of a human is not happening to us. We have some kind of interface with our electromagnetic field, with our vibration. And if we quicken that, then we can use radiation. Radiation from the sun, wherever it's coming from. There are different kinds of radiation. Some just strike the outside of the skin. Some move into the membrane around a cell and destroy that membrane. Well, of course, if you destroy the membrane around the cell cannot function. And if it cannot function, then it will destruct. Some penetrates even deeper. What it is radiant light. That's what it is. And we are made of light. So we have within us the capacity to interface with radiation in such a way that it speeds our own evolution. I was at Chernobyl, or I was in Russia right after Chernobyl when they were washing down the streets. And I watched, after months and even several years, the four-legged, five-legged, six-legged whatevers that came along, the frogs, the insects, the plants that grew twice the size that they had before. So definitely that radiance affects us. And here we've been sitting in meditation, practicing the art of radiance. The faster that we extend our energy, the more we can utilize that frequency. Again, it's light, it's white light. There are more than 200 shades of white light, most of which we can't see because they're so radiant. People are beginning to sense that. As you know, at Nijoni in the Light Institute, we always trained people to become aware, because you can feel radiation. People get off the plane in New Mexico and they say, wow, it's buzzy here. There's something about this place. It's radiation. It's radiation. So if we know that, we can align to it so that we are moving that fast and it's not this wobble. I remember when they first started burning radioactive materials in Colorado at the military base, and people were driving off the road outside of Denver. It was just amazing. They couldn't find their tongues. They were so affected by that onslaught of a new vibration. So what we want to do is to really align to that. And the way you do it is to simply extend your consciousness and look for radiant molecules in the air or in the earth and feel the frequency and then align to that. We can do this, and we must do it, because it is increasing all over the world. It's increasing in a natural way because the electromagnetic field of the earth is diminishing, talking about ozone holes, etc. It's allowing more radiation to come in from our solar system. We're having a beginning of a bombardment of photon energies, light energies coming. So it is very important for us to have these conversations. And we have it within us, especially, to do it. The first time I went to Japan, it was right at the celebration of Hiroshima, and they were particularly grumpy about the Americans. And I had an audience of 500 people, and I said to them, we were first. We got it first. And let me say that through consciousness, you may have inherited psychogenetically from your grandparents and your great-grandparents who died through radiation an immunity, a capacity to be aware of it, to use it, to align to it. They were stunned by that concept. And I hope some of them that heard that will be thinking about that at this point. So that, again, they can use that quickening in a way that supports what it is to walk a human body. So we don't have to be afraid of it, but we do have to be conscious of it. My higher self said 20 years ago, the 3 major diseases on the planet are cancer, AIDS, and radiation, all of which have the same theme. It's about the self, about the the integration or the integrity of the self, whether that's a cellular level or that's a unifying conscious level. And so this is just one of those little kisses that can support us. There I was in Chernobyl, and here I am to tell the tale, you know, as well as many other places that have been hot. And again, when we release our fear and we reach out, whether it's to another human or it's to a catastrophe or a natural event, when we reach out to it, the energy moves in such a way that we are capable of that kind of alignment. When your energy is strong moving out from you, energies that are burnt, that are wobbling, will not affect you. They simply will not affect you. Take it from the principle that you could be exposed to some terrible disease that's contagious, and yet only a small percentage will actually get that disease. Why is that? Why? When we say, oh, it's just you have a strong immunity, but what makes you have a strong immunity? It's always a sense of self. People in the health profession never get the diseases of their patients. They wouldn't think of it. It's not allowed. You know, they don't do it. So we don't have to do it. We just need to get up there and say, I will use this, and feel that quickening as an energy that's palpable, because it is. Usually it feels like a wobble. And when you actually look consciously at the molecules, of the radioactive molecules, they are kind of doing that. It's interesting, as you know, people that do cranials, if you're holding the head of a person who has either had radiation or has cancer, you feel the brain will do that because the cells are wobbling. And so we just have to recognize that and then shift it. We have the power to do it. It's a very exciting time. Because on the flip side of that, what would happen if we stimulated our brains more? You know, if we shifted our cellular energetics. I can remember a long time ago an experiment whereby they kept a cancer cell alive for a very long period of time just by changing the water, you know, and they did it with various different kinds of cells. We have to change the water in us, the radiance in us, so that we can live better, longer, and again, be part of that spinning up. Evolution never stops. We are not the end. What else?
I have a question to ask you. You sort of brought up about where we're at right now on the planet. How do you see our solar work at this time collectively? How do you see what it is exactly that we need to do from that higher level?
From the higher level, we have come in to be a part of a shift. The earth can no longer support the poisons and the smothering energies that have come from hundreds of thousands of years of warring, of slaughter, of negativity that have been poured into the soil. So the earth is going through a shift. The earth is off its axis. It's been off its axis off and on for a long period of time. It's really coming off its axis now. And so we are here to participate in that because we have been here through those kinds of things before. So the key to our collective purpose, well, I would say there are two keys. One is that we have always had the illusion that we were separate entities, that I had a soul and you had a soul, rather than we are a collective soul. Because we had that illusion wandering around in physical form, we developed profound fear and hatred of each other. So humans don't trust each other. And in order to master higher laws of manifestation, we have to come to a place where we can trust each other because We don't give each other the power to destroy us. And therein lies that point of reference that spins the evolutionary spiral, which is we are no longer here for survival. That is a primordial concept. King of the mountain, I will survive above you. We cannot carry that through as a species, or as a species that participates or has come here not only to learn from this human experience, but to give something to it through the wisdom of our soul. Infinite incarnations of the soul. So, as we expand consciousness, again, this is why we do incarnational work, not for the cleverness of, oh, maybe I was somebody important, but what are the themes that my soul has worked on, that is working on now? So that as we experience many births and many deaths, we lose our fear of what will happen to this body, because we know that our consciousness moves on. When we let go of squeezing and blaming our bodies will function much better for us. They have the capacity to live much, much longer than we are now, and much better than we are now. But we have to begin a dialogue. We have to begin conversing with the body in ways that we haven't before. So this idea of I have to survive must dissolve in order for us to use the wisdom. We can't access the wisdom that we've had through many incarnations if we're hanging on to, what if I die? Or what if I get sick? Or what if I don't get paid this month? You know, all the levels of survival that come to us. We will survive. And the more that we squeeze, the more obstacles we place in front of us. The more that we begin to expand our sense of self, the easier it is for us to speak with our bodies and our bodies to perform for us and us to manifest. We have come with this wonderful collective capacity that if one person can do something, so can we. Well, look at the templates we've had. Break the bread. Why are we starving? Galactics. We don't need oil energy on this planet. We have points of reference for information on energy, on life that we haven't accessed because we've been squeezing so much, and we have interpreted or we have repeated, shall I say, the lives of our parents and our parents' parents. One of the first things we always do, both at the Light Institute at Nijoni, is begin to psychogenetically peel away what we're carrying around from our parents and our parents' parents that don't serve us. Not their fault, not their conversation, our illumination. What is it you want to inherit from them, and what is it you don't? What serves you, and what does not serve you? So we need this kind of conversation energetically, not just mentally or emotionally, so that we can, again, build a new base that allows us to give a legacy, even as we live, into the world. Because science says that the breath of the first human is still in the atmosphere. So we actually, through breath, have the way to pull in the capacity to do a miracle. That's why we do fire walks here. And that's why we do all kinds of things, call the rain, to help people to have experiences that you cannot rationalize away, but could connect you to your potential. And those potentials that we've seen again and again and again belong to us. That's the legacy, that's the inheritance that we can have. If there's been an Einstein, are there no Einsteins in this room today? There are. There are. It's simply that we bow our heads and we don't claim a point of reference to that. We don't allow ourselves to imagine. I've just started a new book called Potential Brain. And I'm not doing it like everyone else is talking about the brains. I'm really going to talk about how it is that we could play with our brain, How could we imagine, how could we envision a brain that has capacity to dissolve matter? If you can call the rain, as the Hopis have done for 4,000 years, you can also, as I was teaching in Russia, you can turn that same law of energy around and dissolve radiation, for example, or pollution, or so many social problems that we have today, crime. We can move this. We must begin to play with it. And we must begin to play with it together, rather than, oh, this one can do that, but I can't. No, everyone can. The same way everyone can walk across fire, etc. So the mandate to us is to dissolve away that kind of separation and limitation and survival. It's primordial. It's not about illuminated beings. We have all been illuminated in other lifetimes. It's time for us to awaken to that and see what it is from that illumination that would serve our evolutionary process at this time. It isn't that we're falling back to something from before. It's simply that there are more dots to fill. Infinite dots to fill. And that's why we're here. And again, this is not an ordinary lifetime. It's not an ordinary span. Our pulse on this planet or in this solar system or in this galaxy. And only people who have something to give are here. There are no people floating around. None. Not people who are hurt, not people that are sick, not people who are dying. They're all here saying, does this remind you of something? How is this about you? Pay attention, do something, be something, engage, engage. Unfortunately, we often feel that if we're going to fulfill our destiny or our purpose, it has to be some big thing that everyone's going to have. That, again, is a residue from the past. It's what you do in your consciousness that makes a difference. If you are driving along, I am meditating. Who needs my energy? Who needs light at this moment? A place in the world, a person. When you're standing in a store waiting, we spend so much time waiting. One of the first lessons of my higher self is never, ever wait. Don't wait. Don't be in suspended animation. You're there. Look around. There's some kind of synergistic reason you're there at that moment. Who could you bump into? What could you observe? What could you extend out? As we use consciousness, every moment becomes exciting and potential. What else?
Can you talk about, when you said the word synergy, I was thinking synergy, but then can you talk about, recognizing synergy and what you do with it? This was when I was at the hairdresser. She, I know, she looked at the same company as me, and she I want to talk to at the SEC. This was an important date when she started. So how do you, when you synchronicity, when you think synchronicity's there, which I think it is, what do you do then?
Well, you want to use it. You want to, you want to say, oh, I get it. I see the point of reference, and then you want to extend your consciousness to it so that there is some kind of telepathy or some kind of energetics that go on. If we just ignore synergy, we miss the ring, and
I was at the hairdresser. This is a women's magazine. I was not expecting to see somebody.
Well, we're never expecting synergy.
Yeah.
Synergy isn't about our humdum daily lives. Synergy is about wake up. See that?
Yeah.
Wait. I know that. And then, when you know that, it's about giving something to it.
So
all humans have reticular activating systems of the brain. They all pick up when you are focusing on them. And so if you focus on someone, if you ever bump into them in the physical, they'll go, oh, I know you. You go, yes, you do. And they don't just know you, but they know you in a positive way. So right away they start trusting. Right away there's, you and I, we have something together. And that's what we want to do with synergy. Now, if you have a quote, negative synergy, you want to use that as well. Because you are in that place at that time. And so there's a meaning to that. Maybe it's something you owe someone. Maybe it's something you need to rebalance. We're about to go into Mercury retrograde. It's a very good time to look around and say, what do I need to repeat? Who do I owe something to? But the beautiful thing about synergy, I think, is that it's a whisper to you that says, life is not random. Here's a potential. Here's a possibility. You may know what you want from that person. You may not. But if you link up with them, then synergy can begin to spin. And that's brings us into what my higher self calls critical mass. Where suddenly here's the person, and then there's another coincidence, and another, and another, and another. And then suddenly you have enough. You have enough for that moment when critical mass will come into form. And so, again, it's only asking you to magnetize it. So if you have a synergetic awareness, you want to amplify it, magnetize it, even if you don't know what its purpose is, because something will happen there. Nobody's a stranger to us. And so it's really exciting. I think for me, when you have a synergistic awareness, it's like a kiss from the cosmos. It's really saying, you're in the right place at the right time, and you're not alone. There's some kind of awareness. I have this little thing with shooting stars because I have glass over my ceiling. So if I'm thinking a thought and then there's a shooting star, I was like, okay, pay attention to that thought. There's something there that has meaning for you. And so what we want to do is always interpret that meaning as something possible, as a potential. Aha, here comes something for me. Because that's what the cosmos is actually trying to do all of the time. That's what meditation is. Opening up, letting the chatter go, so that we can actually allow the receiving of energies that would support us. We never know from whom we're going to get supporting energy that could change our lives. That come in and say, oh, I love what you do, or I love who you are, and I'm with you. And at this time on the planet, all of us really need that little kiss. We do. So the more that we look for it, and this is something that I learned working with telepathy forever ago, which is that if you can envision it, you can attract it to you. So again, it's what you're doing with it in your consciousness that makes the difference. It opens the opportunity and brings it to you. And more on this planet, we're finding that we do get those synergistic moments. We know who's calling us. We have a telepathic connection. We feel the energies on across the planet. And this opens us so that we can serve and use our consciousness. And it doesn't take anything. It doesn't take training. It doesn't take permission. It doesn't take acceptance. It just takes, there it is. I will spin it. I will use it. So there's so much more positive supporting energy around us than we could ever imagine. Even when we think we're not connecting to each other, we really are. We could use that at this moment. Thank you. Good. What else? Bruce?
Okay.
2 weeks of silence, that's enough.
Not characteristic, I understand. And speaking of silence, actually my question is about language and spirit.
Yes.
Because I had a consultation with you in which you allowed me to see how energy changes simply with a choice of two different, what we consider standard English words. I was describing the situation to you, and I used a particular word to describe it. You suggested another word. As soon as I tried that other word, the energy just expanded, the whole thing opened.
Yes.
And that got me back to a question that has been with me for some time, and that is, since thought itself creates, obviously, language, creates. And when you're finished with your present book, I think a book on, you know, the energetics of spirit and language would really if someone were to read it.
That would expand my imagination in terms of what is language, because I think the four-leggeds have a language. I think there's a language of the eyes, you know, that has always been very important to me. Catching that little on the side energetic that's there. My assistant Allison is studying 12 languages right now. And when she's watching movies, she actually can understand in 12 languages. And they're not easy ones: Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Greek, etc. And you know how we write languages, or how we speak them, the way we place the verbs or the consonants or whatever it is. In each language it's different. So as somebody learns to do something from left to right, or right to left, or up to down, or diagonally, the brain is going to create pathways that belong to that vibration. And so spiritual language is beyond sound. Certainly we know that there are languages we call Sanskrit, for example, and even I think some aspects of Hebrew, sacred languages, because it had sacred sounds that somehow reflect or vibrate in different stratas of reality or potential. So, you know, it's like, do we see with our eyes, or do we see with our skin, or can we do both? Language is the same thing as we were talking about. We can put a spin on a word. One person may see that word in one way, and another person may see that word differently, or in a different language. The translation could be very, very different. And I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but when I first, maybe 40 years ago, maybe longer, I was trying to find a vocabulary for spiritual expression. And it almost caused me to not be able to speak at all, because I simply couldn't find something that would describe something that you experience in 70 senses. Not just in a linear way, not just a flat surface, but this holographic kind of perception. And finally, one time when I was quite frustrated, my higher self really helped me to recognize that language has to be the essence of your spirit. It's the energy that comes from you. The same way somebody could say something very nice and sweetly, and they really mean, I'd like to strangle you. And you know that they mean they want to strangle you. You know. So we want to find that threshold through which the sounds that we utilize through the spoken word really carry the essence of the soul. It doesn't do any good to say it softly if your intention is, I'd like to smack you one. I witnessed that the other day with someone who works with children, and so because they work with children, they're always using this very quiet, sweet voice. But she was absolutely in a fury. Not me. She was, you know. And it caused me to contemplate again, how could she, where does she have an opportunity to release that? You know, bottling that up because this is the presentation you're supposed to give, instead of this is what's true for me at this moment. So words can be rubberized, so to speak. I think that we can massage a sentence or a communication, and we must, from essential levels of our being. When we do that, when we come from a deeper place, then that sound functions, and it allows the ripple out. Several of my books have that kind of energy because I actually spoke them first. You know. Can you remember what the two words were?
Yes, one was control and the other was choice.
Lovely pair of words.
And when I described a situation that involved very, very complicated machinery and processing and system design and all of that,
Yes.
and I used the word controlling the whole thing, you suggested, how about knowing, choosing?
Yes.
And I tried knowing rather than controlling, and looking at the same picture
Yes.
that had looked like this,
Yes.
it just expanded.
Exactly.
And it occurred to me that that must be just very powerful, and that if I have more insight into which words expand,
Exactly.
and in communicating to another person, language being not that perfect for communication,
Exactly.
if you could expand energy, the individual would feel that energy expansion.
Feel that subtlety of control. It was a perfect word in actuality, because there you were operating this very complex machinery. So you were at the control. But when you are controlling, there's an effort, there's an energetic effort of paying attention with control. I have to do it. Whereas when you're using a choosing or a knowing, then there's a kind of trusting. So there's no effort. You know how to run the machinery. You know how to use the computer or the complex this and that lights up this or makes this move or all of that. And that's holographic. So when you're in that vibration, then you yourself in the picture, in the experience, in the living, are actually changed. And it allows you to be more powerful in actuality.
That was why knowing was so powerful, because I was doing everything so fast
Yes,
that it was beyond thought.
that's right.
And I also knew that if I ever slowed down to think about what I was doing, I
Couldn't
would
do it.
have a tremendous crash.
Yeah.
So, but as long as you don't think about it, as long as you just know, then it just flows out of your hands, and it's exciting, and it really makes you want to experience even more challenge once you get to a point where you're able to do that.
Yes. And so that brings us back to radiation, to quickening, to evolution, to that kind of energy where we're not stopping the flow by acknowledging, oh, I know that, or oh, that's right, or I've got to control it, but just simply allowing it. And there's a difference. People always used to say, go with the flow. This is different. You know, going with the flow is as a way of saying, allow it. But actually being a part of the flow moving through you is something even bigger, much, much bigger. Because you are orchestrating the direction of the river, the direction of life. And that's an entirely different shade of experience, which I think is exactly what we're about right now. Yeah, fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about race in the
Yes.
world and sort of the ramifications for race as we move through the shift.
Yes. Oh, that's such a large conversation because we don't deal with the word very well. I wrote a book called Psychogenetics here, and I was talking about how we inherit from our great-great-grandparents imprints from them. If they were afraid of someone from a different race because they might overrun them or hurt them, or they overran the others, there's going to be a judgment there that is passed down through infinite generations so that you don't even know why you have some coloration when it comes to somebody from another race. You know, we can't even separate that out because we see people from another race as if they were a completely different culture, because culture and blood mix. And so it's not just, oh, they're a different race, but it means, were they taught differently than me? What do they think is true? What do they think about me? And so in the book Psychogenetics, I did a lot of working with discovering unconscious imprints, fears especially, that you have, so that you could release them with light. You could release them from the cellular memory of your body. The other part of that is so fascinating to me is that genetically There's no one further away from you than your 44th cousin on the entire planet. So what does that do to race? Somewhere there's a very small mixing pot, and we all have it. And when I did that psychogenetics, no, it was another book called Soul Bodies, I was studying, Chinese face reading, measuring bones, all of those things that come from different cultures and different races from way back to now. Particular structure, physical structure that is specific to somebody's race or time or place on the planet. And it's fascinating to me how each of us carry so many different measurements that belong to different races. There are some groups on the planet that feel that they need to have a pure race. I was talking to one of those groups in the last couple of years who were saying that they're beginning to shed that, where you had to be purely from that race, otherwise you didn't count. And of course here in America we are all American mongrels, so to speak, and can be proud of it, because what does it offer us? What does it offer us? Each race that's on the planet right now have been successful, or they wouldn't be here still. And so what is it in them? Maybe it's a physiological thing. Maybe it's some kind of physical genetics, DNA. Maybe it's some kind of spiritual genetics that's allowed them to be here at this time with the gifts that they have to give. When I was 16, I wanted to have 12 children, each with a different person from a different race. Well, I know that. I know now that I had that urge because I've had many lifetimes manipulating genetic encoding. And so it still fascinates me. I find that the mixture of races often brings the most beautiful form. Most beautiful children come from those kinds of mixtures. And so we must, in order to go through this right now, that's just one element in the hologram of our illusion, that primordial illusion of separation and mistrust, of fear that needs to be dissolved. I have contemplated many times how I would integrate, for example, refugees. I think every single country on the planet who has accepted refugees has messed it up. We haven't done it correctly because we haven't learned how to integrate and protect at the same time, which is our own fear. If you just put somebody, okay, you can stay in this corner over here, well, eventually they'll outgrow their corner and they'll begin to influence you. In the same way that it can be reversed. So that conversation of who are you beyond your race? And what's in your race if you look at it historically or genetically? That could change, that could allow us to find a place where we can come together. Where we don't have to say, you're different than me, therefore one of us can make it and the other can't. But we haven't learned how to integrate. And that's why we're having these experiences. That's why we have refugees all over the world. We are supposed to be the great melting pot. We're not doing very well right now. We're putting up a wall on our border. I was there when the Berlin Wall went down. How could we be putting up a wall? What have we learned from that? So, again, there is all of that conversation of if we can just keep to ourselves, then we'll have power. Power to our own group. Well, that just isn't going to function in the future. It's not functioning now. And so we have to break those things down. And I love to work with people in incarnations of the soul, because they will always come up with having been in some other time, space, in some other body, in some other race than they're in right now. And that allows them to understand why they're afraid of some race or why they feel a connection to another race. Because it uncovers our history. It uncovers the point of reference inside us. And I think that is infinitely valuable. We can talk about what the shoulds of being humanitarian forever and never let go of that little thread of, well, in actuality, I think the people of this race are 1, 2, 3, 4. And then who's talking? Are you talking out of your experiences? Or are you just mimicking your grandparents' experiences? Or your great-great-great-great-great-grandparents' experiences? And so it's an exciting time to expand our consciousness and begin to look at that. Why do we feel the way we do about other people? And it'll always come down to the self. It'll always come down to our own experiences in many incarnations. What is lodged in our emotional DNA, our physical DNA, our spiritual DNA, that prevents us from seeing that we are absolutely the same? I read in one of my books that frogs are 0.04%, something like this, different than humans. 0.04%. So put that into the genetic pot of human races. No. And so you're so right. This is a conversation we must begin to, or an adventure we must begin to embark upon in order to bring our earth into a place of balance. There should be no one starving on this planet, not only because we have templates of manifesting food, but because we in America have enough grain to feed the entire world for something like 40 years. The entire world. Where's all that grain? It's not being shared. Aha. Now we come to the source of our problems. We have not learned how to work together, to share. We have the grain, you have the whatever. We will not let your children starve or you starve. That's what breaks down those kinds of barriers of fear. There's enough. And I've lived in so many countries where there's been such a huge shift, separation between races and between the haves and the have-nots. And as long as you perpetrate that, you will be vulnerable to the backlash. It doesn't serve us. So thank you for bringing that up. And just imagine, what race would you like to be? I'd like to have black skin so I wouldn't wrinkle myself, because I love the sun. What other attributes might some other race have? For example, Indians in India. I've never met an Indian, even if they were starving on the street, who didn't have the most holographic brains you ever saw in your life, which is why, as a group now, they are way ahead of everybody else in the technology of computers and holographic, because they have those kinds of minds. They see everything holographically. There's so much that we could have by putting a little mixture in there. Thank you. What else is the final perspective for us in this day?
How do you tell if somebody else has a synchronicity, but then they want me to do something to make their synchronicity happen?
But that may be your conclusion.
Well, I don't have to do it. She can rent a car and stay for her.
But what you want to do...
But how do you tell?
Forget telling.
Okay.
Always know that if there's synergy, it's about you. Forget them. We always give everybody else so much power, and they're the ones, and they need to do it or they need to make us do it. You could drop that entire conversation and look at it from the perspective, from even an expedient perspective. How can I serve myself and you the best, because we're obviously connected? So I will be the giver, or I will initiate the motion, rather than thinking what everyone else thinks, because that brings us back to race. We are so busy in our lives presuming somebody else's pretense, somebody else's hidden motive, somebody else's agenda, which almost never has anything to do with what's true for them. You know, we're not even a bleep on their horizon, and we are creating this huge story. You know, well, yes, if they're on your horizon, you can use that. Never mind them. And that's where we need to be on this planet. It's about us. It's about us. And that's actually very freeing. Again, the power of responsibility, the power to say, I will, I am, I choose.